right, welcome everybody. Let's have, as tradition has it, a one-word check-in for everyone, please. Matt Lee started this tradition off beautifully. What is your state of mind today? How are you feeling? How are you doing? How would you sum up your mood today? I'm going to be cheesy and American and put the word pumped in the chat for less exciting. trying to make that word enter common parlance in the UK. Interested, Gilda, or some tired but thankful? Love that triple barrel single word. Matt? Okay, welcome everybody. There'll be many people joining as we start today. Hi, Noemi. Okay, so welcome to our new time. I hope this hasn't caused any inconvenience or minimal inconvenience to anyone. It's so we have a time that's more convenient for people, particularly in East Asia and Australasia, where it is still 5 a.m. And we'd like to thank those of our members today joining us at the crack of dawn for us in this meeting. And one of those who has joined us at the crack of dawn is our host today, Dr. Tayyab Rashid, who is a senior lecturer at the Centre for Wellbeing Science at the University of Melbourne. He's also a licensed clinical psychologist, and his expertise includes strength-based clinical psychotherapy with complex mental health challenges, resilience, and post-traumatic growth. And today, Tayyab is going to speak to us about a project that he's been leading, co-leading with several other speakers here today. And the blurb I will post in the chat, but also read it out to you today to kick things off. I put this in email before, and I'm just going to post this in the chat now. This is much more than a one-word check-in. There we go. In ethno-culturally diverse and psychologically vulnerable communities, incorporating cultural resourcefulness in resilience and well-being programs is imperative. Such resourcefulness could enable vulnerable individuals to not only survive better, but also thrive. Integrating concepts and skills from positive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness, a strength-based resilience program was created, piloted, and is now disseminated cross-culturally. Today's presentation from Tayyab and others here today will share its cultural adaptations in Sri Lanka, Guyana, New Zealand, and Lebanon. Before we dive in, Matt, I believe you have a couple of announcements to make and a couple of administrative matters, right?
Yes, thank you, John. And while I'm doing that, if you want to give me permission to record, I had to send a request to you. So, and again, thanks to people who are just joining for joining us at this new time. I hope this works for you all. It seems to work a little bit better for some of our members. One announcement, I don't know if Me Too is on the call. Me Too, are you here today? Let me see if she's in the participant list.
I can't find her in there, so we could wait till the end of the call to see if she joins.
Let's wait until she joins us. Okay. She has we want to announce a great award for her, but we'll wait on that. The other announcement is that, let me find this, that this summer there's a conference at Harvard, one at Harvard, one at Oxford. And the one at Oxford's been running for a couple of years. This is a new one at Harvard. This one's going to be at Harvard, hosted by the Human Flourishing Program. Tyler Vanderweel, Brendan Case, and myself will be speaking. One of our long-standing network members, Steve French, is joining us, and I'll put his email address if you're interested or know someone who might be interested in this conference, which is really geared towards entrepreneurial leaders. And so they're hoping or they're expecting that people would have at least 10 years successful track record in business, senior leader, entrepreneur, owner, founder, member in a family business group.
Has Matt frozen for other people too?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let's give it 5 seconds before we move on and come back to Matt's point later. Okay. Matt will rejoin us later to share that. So let's move on to Tayyab's presentation now. And we've got some time at the end of the presentation where we can make way for Matt's announcement there. So, Tayyab, without further ado, handing over the floor to you.
Thank you. And here we go. And I'm going to put in presentation mode. And swap. So everyone can see my screen. If I could get a verbal nod.
Yeah, we're all good. It's all good.
Okay, excellent. All right. And so just a brief outline, we're going to describe the strength-based resilience background, and that's going to be about 5 to 7 minutes. And then the real crux is the international adaptation. We'll start with Ayesha Nisar, who is joining us from Dunedin, New Zealand, followed by Murtaza Esufally and Anushka Fernando from Sri Lanka and London. And then we'll do a small interactive activity followed by Milad Hadchity from who's actually in Qatar right now, but he will be discussing adaptation in Lebanon, and we'll be finishing with Nabil Ali, who will be discussing SPR's adaptation in Guyana, but joining us from Toronto, and then we'll hopefully have some time for question and answers. Because they're all our partners wonderfully are here, just to avoid any glitches, we have recorded, pre-recorded their presentations, but in the end, we'll have the opportunity to ask a question and answers. So let's start off. There are lots of people we want to thank you who have been helping us in this program for over 15 years, and you can see some of them. Without their contributions, we couldn't be here. Let me kick off with our mentor, and I cannot say enough things about Jane, who's going to give us background. We're not going to read the bios. We'll send the slides, and you can read the bios. I can only suffice to say that Jane, if there's one individual who has worked on prevention of depression and both cultivation of resilience and well-being in the world with children and adolescents, is Jane Gillham, both from empirical and practice perspective. Over to you, Jane.
You're muted, Jane.
Sorry about that. Tayyab, can you forward the slides for me? I don't think I have access.
Yeah, I will.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So thank you, Tayyab, for that gracious introduction. And thank you all. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm going to talk very quickly about some of the background for strengths-based resilience. And just to start by saying that it's been a great pleasure for me, great fortune, to collaborate with Tayyab and with Afroze Anjum for almost 20 years. And the programs that I'm going to talk about, the background is work that we've been involved in together. Okay, that's the next slide.
All right, I'm finding my, yes. You can see the next slide, Jane?
No,
I can't.
Cannot see.
We're seeing this the same slide.
Okay, how about this? Well, it's easier then. You can see this next. I have to reshare the screen, sorry. Now you can see, right?
Oh, okay,
Yes.
fantastic. Okay, so one of the programs that we've worked on over many years is the Penn Resilience Program. And this was a program that I developed with Karen Rivich, Lisa Jaycox, and Marty Seligman. And then Tayyab and Afroze and I did a lot of work together being trained in this program and then teaching teachers and counselors to deliver this program throughout the world. It was originally designed as a depression prevention program, and this program takes skills from cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a very effective treatment for depression in adults and adolescents, and also has been found compared to medication treatment to prevent relapse of depression. And so our vision in developing this program was pretty simple. Could we take skills from cognitive behavioral therapy, which teaches a variety of skills for identifying and challenging pessimistic self-talk, for thinking more flexibly, for problem solving, for coping? Could we take those skills, teach them to teens before they develop depression, and potentially prevent depression from developing? This is a program that is designed for school deliveries. So this work focuses on children and adolescents. And I guess, Tayyab, you can do the next slide. And this is just some data. I'm going to go very quickly through a little bit of data. But our very first study of this program, we worked with teens that we thought were at somewhat elevated risk for depressive symptoms. They scored above average on a measure of depressive symptoms. This is a data slide showing you the percentage of teens who had moderate or high levels of depressive symptoms on the Children's Depression Inventory at pre-baseline before the intervention. So purple is the Penn Resilience Program, blue is a control group that did not receive the intervention. And what you can see is 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months after the intervention ended, we had a significant effect in preventing the onset of moderate to severe depressive symptoms. That was 20 years or 30 years ago. Yikes, a long time ago. And since that time, we've done many, many studies. Other people have done a lot of studies of this program, and Tayyab will take us to the next slide. And this is my collaborator, Steve Brunwasser, and I did a couple of meta-analyses a while back, and there have been more studies since then. But in the around 2009, 2008, 2009, there were more than 20 controlled studies of this program with pretty diverse samples. The program originally was tested in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, but quickly moved to other places and was adapted for other contexts. There are studies in China, in Portugal, in India, for example. We found, looking across that literature, that there were benefits through the last follow-up period we could examine. So through at least 12 months of follow-up on the program, improving hope and optimism and reducing or preventing depressive symptoms. And there weren't as many studies looking at other outcomes, but we did find some evidence for benefits on anxiety symptoms, behavior problems, and coping and problem solving. So go to the next slide. So that's one program, one area of work that we've been deeply involved in, taking these cognitive behavioral skills, which are partly a foundation for strengths-based resilience, and trying to teach them so that people who may or may not be struggling with depression have a toolkit that they can use to handle challenges. Another big influence, obviously, is positive psychology. And I won't do justice to positive psychology. I'll try to do a very quick background, but the focus here is on how do we not just prevent people from developing distress or difficulty, but how do we really move people to flourishing? Many different areas of focus in positive psychology. Marty Seligman's model of PERMA talks about positive emotions, increasing strengths, meaning, purpose, and relationships, and helping people to accomplish their goals. We often talk about this as helping to build upward spirals. Prevention might be preventing, like Penn Resilience Program might be preventing downward spirals. Positive psychology, the emphasis is much more on how do we build a positive fabric of everyday life, build these upward spirals. So you can move on. And then Tayyab and Afroze and I were very involved in a positive psychology program for high school students. This was an intervention that many of us developed together with a team of high school teachers, a curriculum to take core elements of positive psychology and teach them to 14 to 15-year-old students at school. You can move on. And this curriculum was designed originally for 9th grade in the US, so 14 to 15-year-olds, that transition year into high school. There are 3 major units, 25 lessons over a year, focusing on positive emotions. How do we build positive emotions in everyday experiences? And strengths is really the heart of the program. How do we identify and use our strengths and maybe develop new strengths? And then meaning, how do we figure out what creates meaning in our lives, and how do we find more of that? So we'll move on. And then we did a big research study on this curriculum that Afroze was very involved with, helping to listen to a lot of the intervention sessions and see how teachers did with the program. We found, I'm going to summarize at a high level, our intervention findings. We found, compared to a randomized control condition, school as usual control, that students who received the positive psychology program showed improvements in positive social skills, skills like cooperation and empathy. They showed improvements in leadership and reductions in behavior problems. And these effects were noticed by parents and teachers. So that's really important. It wasn't just student self-report. We also found improvements in students' learning strengths. So strengths like curiosity and love of learning, and that was as reported by teachers. And importantly here, it's teachers who were not teaching this program and did not know that whether students had received this program or not. And we also found improvements in students' self-reported enjoyment and engagement in school. So we can move on. So this is just showing you the increases in positive social skills on the social skills rating scale. I won't, you'll have this slide, but I won't stay with this for long. Let's move on. Okay, so lessons learned. We found that programs like the Penn Resilience Program, which teaches CBT, cognitive behavioral skills, and the Positive Psychology High School program that teaches positive psychology skills, these programs can have long-term benefits on students' well-being. The benefits in both of these programs last at least 12 months, perhaps longer, 2 years in some studies. And we really haven't had the opportunity to look way beyond that. So they have long-term benefits on students' well-being, at least as much as we can tell. They produce benefits that are noticeable to students as well as to their parents and to their teachers, and they enhance students' engagement in school, and in some of our research, also their academic achievement. I think this is really exciting, and it's one of the foundations for strengths-based resilience. As Afroze and Tayyab and I were working together, we started to wonder, what about the power of a program that deeply integrates and combines these approaches, combining cognitive behavioral therapy skills with positive psychology? And that's a major goal of strengths-based resilience, as you'll hear about. And this program also incorporates mindfulness approaches as well. And I will turn it back to you, Tayyab.
Thank you. Next, thank you so much, Jane, for this wonderful background and how we came learning from you. Our next presenter is Dr. Afroze Anjum from Toronto District School Board. Afroze, over to you.
Hi, everyone.
This is her bio. I'm not going to read it. This is her slide, sorry.
Hi, everyone. So we started talking about strengths-based resilience manual. We started with a draft manual of about 60 pages in 2006. At Toronto District School Board, I was responsible for training the school staff. That included teachers, social workers, guidance counselors, and psychologists. In approximately 5 years, we trained about 300 school staff. And after each training, after the teachers had embedded those ideas in their lessons, or the social workers or psychologists had run groups, we will have feedback meetings with teachers where we will get very in-depth feedback from them in terms of what worked and what didn't work. So the manual continued to go through the revisions through a process of co-writing. To give you an example, the latest draft now includes a section on learning and cultural fit for each lesson, so that we are able to cater to the diverse learning and socio-emotional needs of students, especially in a diverse place like Toronto, where more than 100 languages are spoken. To give you an example, in one activity, we ask students to think of an adversity and talk about their own strengths. And what we learned from teachers and from students was that some students who come from collectivistic cultures, which value strengths of humility, had a difficult time with this activity in the beginning. They considered talking about their own strengths and their own success as bragging. So they were given an option to share someone else's story, which inspires them, who handled a challenge using their strengths. So it was a process of co-teaching and multiple revisions, and now the manual is 300 pages.
Thank you, Afroze. And I see in the audience Dr. Carolyn Lennox. Without Dr. Carolyn Lennox's support and many others at TDSP, but especially Carolyn, this would not have been possible. So thank you so much, Carolyn. This is my presentation. I'm not going to read my bio. The program is also informed by my work, my postdoc work with Marty Seligman on positive psychotherapy, because where we also integrated positive psychology, some cognitive techniques and mindfulness. We did a large study of PPT in UK with psychosis, and then we got increasing questions, can we also adapt it to school settings? And this is how the program came about. Program has 14 modules. You can get the slides. These illustrations, we had an artist draw all these illustrations. We just had lots of discussions with them so they could get the grasp the ideas. These are the sort of the title of all these 14 modules. And then we have a number of studies, but I'm going to present one seminal study where we worked in 5 high priority schools in Toronto. And we had a 6 and 12-month follow-up, but the data is just outcome data. We find where you see dark bars, we have significant result in reducing stress, well-being, social skills, resilience, but not in stigma. These results lasted sometimes for 6 months and sometimes a few of them over 12 months period. We also did the similar study in post-secondary setting where I was University of Toronto Scarborough, and we found similar changes in stress and well-being, which lasted over the next 6 months. Now we are also delighted that we'll be publishing the book with some studies, and hopefully that will stimulate more studies. With that, this is the background of the program. A big part is the cultural adaptation, because as Afroze mentioned, lots of students from different cultural communities came, and we just didn't want to give them the Eurocentric versions and notions of resilience and well-being. So you will hopefully this book will be a published and workbook by the end of this year. And our first, now how the programs got adapted or picked up by different partners. These are all volunteer efforts except for the last one, where Nabil will describe the funding resource. As our first presenter is Ayesha Nisar. Ayesha is here from Dunedin, Dunedin, New Zealand, but she has kindly recorded her presentation. I'm going to present Ayesha's presentation here.
Kia ora koutou, greetings from New Zealand. I'm Ayesha Qureshi, and I'm going to present the findings of my PhD research on strengths-based resilience intervention for family carers. My research ideas evolved as a result of my personal experiences of being a family carer of my mum, who suffered multiple strokes. While I was navigating through my role as a carer, the closer I looked, the more I saw family carers playing a crucial role all over the world. And I don't think it will be an exaggeration to say that if family carers were to stop caring today, our health and social care systems would just crumble, and yet they remain largely unrecognized. When I dug further into the research literature, I found that there was a huge research gap on the topic of the resilience of the carers of stroke survivors. Hence, I embarked on a research journey with the aim of the development of a psychosocial intervention program to improve resilience of informal carers of stroke survivors. And I used the Adapted Medical Research Council framework for the development of intervention. Because this was a complex intervention, this research comprised of a series of investigations. The first study was the systematic review of the literature to identify the effectiveness of psychosocial interventions for building resilience of informal carers of stroke survivors. The second study was the qualitative descriptive study involving carers of stroke survivors to explore the issues and challenges faced by carers that affect their resilience, and to seek carer suggestions about the content and design of the intervention program they perceive would be beneficial to improve their resilience. The results of the qualitative study identified that carer challenges comprised of psychosocial issues such as living with ambiguous loss, adapting to new reality, coping with uncertain change in life, and diminishment of self. Carers also identified that stroke severity, carer exclusion in care planning, and financial stressors were some other challenges that we had to deal with. In terms of carer suggestions of the resilience program, carers suggested that a resilience intervention that would comprise of learning coping skills strategies, positive communication skills, and learning from shared experiences of other carers would help them build their resilience. So these were some of the pictorial descriptions that I prepared for my research participants when I shared the findings of my research, just to better understand carer psychosocial challenges. Based on the findings of the systematic review, the qualitative descriptive study with carers, and consultations with psychologists, strengths-based resilience intervention was identified to be used in this study. And the third investigation in this PhD study comprised of the feasibility testing of the strengths-based resilience intervention. The primary aim was to assess the feasibility of the intervention, and the secondary aim was to evaluate the potential benefits of the intervention. Strengths-based resilience intervention was adapted and modified for use in the context of carers of stroke survivors, and I was trained by the developers of the program to serve as a facilitator in this research program. The design of this feasibility study was a randomized controlled trial design. 28 carers were recruited from Dunedin and Oamaru with the help of Stroke Foundation New Zealand. Carers who were randomized to experimental group received strength-based resilience intervention once a month for 6 months, and carers who were randomized to the control group were advised to continue with whatever they usually do, for example, attending carer support groups with Stroke Foundation New Zealand. Primary outcomes were feasibility parameters, and secondary outcomes were resilience and psychological well-being scores. The results of the feasibility parameters, such as recruitment and retention, acceptability of randomization, feasibility of quantitative measures, and acceptability of study procedures, was good and favorable. This slide shows the results of the secondary outcome measures. So the resilience scores were calculated using the Corner and Davison resilience scales. As you see, there were significant within and between group differences in the resilience scores. The differences were not only statistically significant, they were also clinically significant, as shown by the larger effect size, thereby demonstrating the clinical significance of the strengths-based resilience intervention for carers of stroke survivors. Psychological well-being scores were calculated with the help of psychological general well-being scales. As you see, the differences in the experimental and control group were not statistically significant, but they were clinically significant, as shown by the larger effect size, thereby demonstrating the clinical significance of the strengths-based resilience intervention on the psychological well-being of the carers of stroke survivors. We also carried out the qualitative evaluation of the strengths-based resilience intervention to know in detail about the acceptability and suitability of the intervention for carer population. And as shown in this framework, strengths-based resilience intervention has caused some positive impact on personal life of the carers in the domain of positive thinking, learning, emotion regulation, reflective thinking, and learning coping skills. Carer also learned some resilience skills and strategies, and they developed some caring connections. And as it always happens that not all the things went well in this research, we were extremely criticized for our eligibility criteria. We thought that 6 months post-stroke would be the right time for the carers to engage in a resilience building program. But we had 3 participants who were 6 months post-stroke, and they told us that the resilience intervention was overwhelming for them, and it was difficult for them to participate in the intervention program because they were still busy in their transition from hospital to home. We were also suggested that someone could have followed them up 6 months down the track to know how they are going with practicing resilience skills and strategies. But in my role as a PhD researcher, based on the limited time frame, it was not possible for me to review and follow up with the research participants. These were some of the positive remarks given by the participants about the program. Some found it as a part of a survival toolkit. Some other ones observed the gratitude journal making a difference in their life. One participant mentioned that they learned to understand the behavior of their husband who suffered from stroke empathetically. And yet another one found working on their strengths was appealing and unique to them. Strengths-based resilience intervention was potentially beneficial and acceptable, worthy of further investigation. The next stage in the research journey will be to determine the effectiveness of the program in a fully powered, culturally adapted RCT with inclusion of Maori and Pacific peoples throughout the research process. This research has caused some strong impact in the Stroke Foundation network. This program has been incorporated in the Community Stroke Advisor Service by the Stroke Foundation and is offered to family carers as part of the stroke rehab journey. I'm thankful to the University of Otago Centre for Health Activity and Rehab Research and the Stroke Foundation New Zealand. I'm also thankful to my supervisors, to research participants, and Dr. Tayyab for providing the opportunity to present. And finally, I'm thankful to Harvard's Human Flourishing Network for listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayesha. Ayesha is here, and we please save her questions for her towards the end. And our next presenters are my wonderful team from Sri Lanka, Murtaza Esufally. As you can see his bio, you will get the slides and recording, and Anushka, who's joining us from London. And let's listen to their presentation. Each adaptation is different, so you will see a different perspective from how it was adapted in Sri Lanka.
Hello, I am Murtaza Esufally, co-founder of Learn for Life Lanka, speaking to you today from Colombo, Sri Lanka, from the Al-Hijra Muslim Vidyalaya School. I have spent the last 30 years in my family business, playing leadership roles in mostly healthcare businesses. I was trained as a lawyer, but I have been drawn to education. And I would like to spend the next 10 years of my life, at least, working to help marginalized communities with the education that they need for the future. About 5 years ago, I felt the need to improve the situation, especially for underprivileged kids, because the system of education is very rigid and very competitive in Sri Lanka, and what is taught is not going to really help them succeed in the classroom and in life, and that thus began the search for strong evidence-based SEL curriculum from all over the world.
I'm Anushka. I'm an advisor to Learn for Life Lanka. I've been with the team since almost its inception, and I take pride in working for the organization because I believe in its mission, and I feel it is a great opportunity for me to contribute to making a change in the education system in Sri Lanka. Since I graduated from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, I have been really interested and focused on the education system in Sri Lanka and looking for opportunities to engage with a team and a project whose objective and mission is to create an impact, a measurable impact, and to provide socio-emotional learning skills to students. And we are extremely privileged to have met Dr. Tayyab Rashid, and we are grateful to him for coming to Sri Lanka and for conducting a training program for artists, teachers, and curriculum developers in Sri Lanka. The content of his program is very valuable and very relevant to the Sri Lankan context. And we have seen how the participants really appreciated his program, how excited they were, and how they found it relevant to their everyday lives. We believe that the strengths-based resilience program that Dr. Tayyab Rashid trained us on is valuable because it helps teachers and students anticipate adversities, give them skills to cope with adversities, and also help them process it. And overall, it helps them to build better connections in the classroom, among their peers, with the teachers, and also for the teachers to help them in their personal lives.
A recent study by the World Health Organization across the adolescent population of Sri Lanka found that 40% of our kids suffer from loneliness, anxiety and depression, and compared to a global average of 10 to 20%. So Dr. Tayyab Rashid's training program, conducted in his inimitable, engaging style, which really connected with the teachers, the curriculum developers and the artists. And this really opened up many conversations because there was so much interest and demand for Learn for Life Lanka with Dr. Tayyab Rashid to take these concepts to the Sri Lankan classrooms and help kids thrive and flourish in class and in life later.
What we're focusing on right now is the adaptation process to Sri Lanka. We are creating a manual for teachers and trainers, and also creating a workbook for students so that it can be used in their everyday lives in the classrooms. We are also translating it into the local languages, to Sinhala and to Tamil, and also including cultural references, examples and stories from Sri Lanka so that the audience can relate better to the content and also connect with the topics that we are teaching. And we're hoping to test it in different parts with different groups. We see it as an iterative process so that we can keep improving and enriching the curriculum.
The modules of SBR that we have been and will be focusing on are the growth mindset, gratitude, positive communication, positive relationships, character strengths and empathy are really, really important for these children to be able to transcend the adversities that they are facing, particularly in the economic crisis that Sri Lanka is going through now. I'm excited that Learn for Life Lanka has the potential to make a real impact and difference with around 5,000 kids in the next 5 years. And if we are successful at working with the National Institute of Education to reform the syllabus, then the impact could be to millions. We will be engaging a research firm to measure the impact of whatever we do. And I'm really confident and excited that with the help of professionals like Dr. Tayyab Rashid, Learn for Life Lanka and our team can really give a set of wings for underprivileged kids to fly.
Our journey began in 2019 where we conducted our first pilot program, and last year we had Dr. Tayyab Rashid conducting the strengths-based resilience program for the first time in Sri Lanka. This year we are focusing on curriculum development. That means we are localizing the content, we're translating it to the local languages, and simultaneously we are conducting teacher training programs and in-class workshops. We have also begun our research and evaluation programs so that we can monitor the impact that we are creating and make the curriculum an iterative process where we can continuously enrich and enhance our content. The teachers who participated in the program were delighted that they had the opportunity to take part in the training program. They said that it gave them a sense of relief and they could relate to the content, and they felt happy, and they felt that these content and these subjects are applicable not only to their daily lives but also to their classroom experience, and that it could enhance their profession and their job as a teacher. We work with a variety of partner organizations. The National Institute of Education is a government agency that leads curriculum development in Sri Lanka, and we work with their curriculum developers themselves. Atlas Stationers is a private organization that has a large reach in Sri Lanka. Foundation of Goodness is a social enterprise. The Serendip Schools Development Foundation works with a cluster of schools that are really marginalized in Sri Lanka, and SOS Villages is an international organization that has a presence in Sri Lanka. We currently impact over 100 students per month through our outreach programs.
Thank you so much, Anushka and Murtaza. They are here so for your question. Let me switch gear because you have been listening. We don't have time, but just one quick practice. So if you have your mobile device or browser, you can participate in it. It's just your option. Go to menti.com and enter code 7196. I'll give you some time. Menti.com. and enter the code 7196 6173 as displayed. Don't enter anything yet. What you will do is, this is one of our biggest and core exercise in the program, where you will see pictures of strengths. They will come very quickly, and then you will select 5 that best describe you, best describe your personality. Okay, and once you finish, you can enter them in the Menti, but just wait because they are 24. They're all numbered, so don't select all 5 in the first 10 months. So what you will see next is a slideshow. It will give you about 30 to 35 seconds just to prepare you, and then once these pictures will come, you will see there are pictures and labels of the strengths. So let's do this exercise. And before we move to the next one. I'll send you the results of the Menti when you send you the material. Interest of time, we move to our next presenter. I had the opportunity to visit Lebanon at invitation of Milad. Milad has a wonderful, is a journalist, and it's actually a star in Lebanon, but also has a master's in applied positive psychology. And here's Milad's presentation. Milad is here also.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's been a great honor to work with Dr. Tayyab Rashid on implementing a strengths-based resilience training to Lebanese journalists. Journalists, especially those working in high conflicts areas, such as the Middle East or Lebanon specifically, with a lot of violence, death, destructions, or displacement, inevitably brings them in close contact with dangerous as well as emotional, evocative situations. To be exclusive and the first media outlet to break the news, media organizations don't hesitate to deploy journalists who may not have specialized training or relevant experience. Also, newly graduate journalists often have a great sense of adrenaline, and they feel the need to distinguish themselves from others by covering challenging and dangerous assignments. In a nutshell, vicarious trauma refers to the cognitive change of individual experiences resulting from constant chronic engagement with traumatic clients, while vicarious resilience refers to the positive consequences of working with trauma survivors and witnessing their stories. It entails experiencing personal strengths, psychological growth, and empowering consequence to listening to clients' accounts of resilience, persistence, hope, and growth. So the question was if interventions such as SBR or mindfulness decrease vicarious trauma or increase vicarious resilience in journalists in Lebanon. We had 80 journalists actively involved in the practice of journalism and have worked in high conflict areas, such as documenting stories of refugees, victims of domestic violence, and also covering war, providing services to survivors, and has face-to-face contact. The interventions were strengths-based resilience, mindfulness, and a control group. And here are some of the results. The feedback and comments from journalists were very constructive and positive. We have to mention at the beginning of each intervention, the journalists showed some resistance to share their stories and their experience, and they were critical throughout the interventions, but they reported that the strengths-based resilience approach or training was very constructive due to the lack of vicarious trauma studies in journalists covering the Middle East and especially in Lebanon. This experience was an excellent opportunity to spread the knowledge and try to reduce such stress. Journalists reported also that implementing a strengths-based resilience training in universities, specifically for journalists, is something very important for them.
Thank you, Milad.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
I will be sending Milad's result slide just in case you have any more questions about it. And our last presenter is Nabil. Nabil works with IRDF, International Development Relief Fund, and he will give you intro about his work there. So here's Nabil.
Sorry, Tayyab, for interrupting.
Hello.
Can you please put the code in the chat?
I will put the code in the chat. Okay.
Thank you.
Nabil Ali, and I have the honor of serving as IDRF's Senior Director of Programs and Operation. IDRF is a Canadian registered and headquartered organization that's been operational since 1984, providing support services to people all around the world under the humanitarian principles and under the auspices of human dignity, self-reliance, and social justice. IDRF currently operates in over 40 countries globally. We have over 100 projects, and we support nearly 2 million people around the world in a variety of different sectors, which includes education, healthcare services, livelihood support programs, emergency response, and clean water programs. IDRF has also been really thinking through how we can really engage and change the scope of a lot of our work to ensure that we deepen the scope of our work versus just widening how much work we tend to do. Over the years, IDRF has really thought through how we can really engage in comprehensive mental health programming. So what we've done is, since 2017, we really started engaging in, really assessing where some of the needs were globally. We did a comprehensive assessment on the country Guyana. Guyana, which is located in South America, however, is Caribbean in culture, is a country in which IDRF has done work in for many years. In Guyana, IDRF has really thought through how could we provide as much support services as possible to those who need it most. In our assessments, one of the key challenges that we continued to receive in Guyana was around mental health support. Whether it was us providing healthcare services, whether it was providing food, access to education, the number one challenge that we continue to see in Guyana was this need for mental health support. Guyana has been ranked for several years as either number 1 or number 2 in suicide rate per capita. It has a very minimal mental health infrastructure. It has only recently introduced a bill to support people for those who have mental health issues, and its work to support that under the Ministry of Health. So its work in the area is fairly limited. However, it is now focusing on that, and it is a key strategic initiative of the Ministry of Health and the current administration in the country. And that has come in parallel with IDRF's work in Guyana. So what we've done at IDRF is we worked on creating a comprehensive partnership with the Canadian government at global.
Nabil, I'm getting a feedback that some people can't hear you, the video. If you are around, can you do the live presentation because you're around? Is that possible?
Sure.
Thank you, Nabil.
Sure. So I also felt the volume was quite low on it. So when it comes to the SBR project and how we've been able to implement it in Guyana, the key areas that we've taken is a 3-pronged approach, right? It's one, thinking about how we can incorporate the SBR program within schools. The other area is within communities. And then we wanted to use communications and advocacy to underpin our ability to deliver the program across the country of Guyana. When it came to schools, a key focus that we've had is to think through, how do you ensure that families that are coming from low-income communities or vulnerable backgrounds actually feel comfortable sending their children to school, or parents that have either dropped out of school can feel comfortable going back to school. And a lot of that oftentimes has to do with their, ability to want to go back to school, or has to do with their, their confidence and whatnot that needs to be built up, and the support services that they need. So the SBR program, one of the key elements that we're doing is we're working with inclusion officers to support mothers that have left school early and try to encourage them to go back to school, and also working with early school leavers, the children themselves, and trying to get them into school. However, we recognize that you can't just encourage someone to go back to school if the school itself isn't welcoming, and if the school isn't going to be a space where people feel like their well-being is being cultivated and supported. So we're working with school counselors, school teachers, overall administration across the board to ensure that they have their capacity built as it pertains to supporting people going through such challenges, and that people also understand where they can go to seek some of that support within their schools. And our target is to support several schools across the country. And it's over the next 5 years, and we think that we'll be quite successful at it. We're currently conducting audits within schools to assess their capacity to take on a program such as this, and the capacity is there. So it's a matter of us actually now implementing it over the coming years. Now, when it comes to the community space, we recognize that oftentimes, the first group of people, that families who do have challenges around mental health, often to go to is our religious leaders, whether it be a priest, whether it be an imam, etc. Families oftentimes go in that direction. So it's building capacity of religious leaders to ensure that they actually know how to triage and provide support or refer people in the right direction. Very similarly, when it comes to doctors, whether it's nurses and overall people within the healthcare infrastructure, supporting them within that area, building their capacity. And we're also looking at supporting overall government staff and staff across the country, like whether you look at police officers or people working for the overall government, that can actually build their support. And we're trying to use SBR community-led sessions to ensure that they not only participate in them, but also in some of their certified programs, whether that be the nursing, program to get them certified, or medical school, that we actually have this program embedded in Guyana. And then the last component is really around how do we really change the conversation around communications and overall advocacy for it, right? Often the biggest challenge that we see in Guyana right now is the fact that there's a lot of stigma around mental health and people seeking mental health support services. So how do you change that conversation? So we're looking at using various celebrities within Guyana, people of influence, using billboards, radio spots, and videos to really change the messaging around it, to encourage people to seek support, refer people to get support in the right areas, and encourage people to come to our program. And that's how we want to do it. We want to use communications to be our vehicle to getting the word out there. Then we want to target people within schools, and then also think through how we can support people within communities. So the overall ecosystem is there. It's a 5-year initiative. Our target's about 65,000 people that we want to support over the next 5 years. And it's an initiative that we have the University of Melbourne, and of course funded by Global Affairs Canada. And we're really looking to see it through. So yeah, I hope that kind of covers it, Dr. Tayyab.
Thank you so much. Matt, I am mindful that's 5 minutes. So if there's any announcement, you can make the announcement. And then if you guys have any questions, me and our collaborators will hang around and answer your questions. But if you need to leave at the hour, that's completely fine. Matt, over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who presented this such rich content for us to explore further. And one of the great things about this network is that we can break into smaller groups and have follow-up conversations. So very much looking forward to being a part of that. I'm sorry about my Wi-Fi earlier. I was in the process of announcing 2 week-long experiences, one at Harvard, one at Oxford. A number of people in the network and in the Human Flourishing program will be presenting. This is being co-organized by Steve French, who's been a long-standing and very supportive member of our network. And I will put Steve's email address in the chat box, and you can chat with him as well. I think where I left off as I was kind of reading through my script and going off script a little bit is that this is really focused on an integration of flourishing and Christian leadership, especially for business leaders. A great opportunity to be challenged in your own leadership development and develop some significant conversations with donors who might invest in your own human flourishing initiative. So if this is not right for you, but you know someone who might find it interesting or beneficial, please have them reach out to Steve directly. And starts July 9th at Harvard, and then there's another one at in Oxford a little bit later. John, I know we have another announcement that you were preparing to offer, and I don't know if Me Too has joined us, but I think and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, probably her time in India, but we probably should just celebrate for the sake of the community, just to celebrate some great news.
Absolutely, yes. I don't think Professor Mitu Khosla is here, but I'll also put this in the email I circulate following this meeting in the coming days. But Professor Mitu Khosla, who is Fulbright's Nehru Fellow and Shastri Fellow, professor at the Psychology Department at the University of Delhi. She emailed to say that she's received the Delhi University Award for Excellence in Research and Teaching for 2023. So huge congratulations to her for that. And I'll share that in an email. The other thing to mention is there is a new special interest group being launched by our longtime member, Wendy Elliott, on Sacred Ecology Special Interest Group. I will circulate information about that, and expressions of interest can go to her following my email that I send later this week. That's everything from me, Matt. So unless you have anything else.
I think one thing we're learning is that 60 minutes is insufficient to contain the vitality of this group and all of the wonderful work being done around the world. So thank you again. We do have just, I guess, a moment officially for questions and answers, and then folks might have to leave. So Tayyab, I'll turn it back over to you to field any questions. Oh, Christine, yes, thank you, Christine. Anyone in the St. Louis area this weekend, join the Education for Flourishing conference. I should have remembered that since I'm speaking there. But many things going on. Again, 60 minutes can't contain us. So Yes, questions for the presenters.
Well, I had a question. Can I?
Sure.
Hello. So I don't remember who did the presentation and made the point that when you were asking the questions about their strength in a culture that has where they, I guess, they value humility, they were hesitant to answer that question. So instead, you directed them to give an example about somebody else, right? But you're still not really addressing the issue, correct? So in the Mentimeter poll, which was the Q&A, I asked the question, how do you really get around that in the future? Because it's not really talking about somebody. You really want them to really reflect about themselves. So how do you suggest you deal with that issue?
I can, Afroze, this question was, you responded. You can go ahead and I can follow up.
Yes, the idea is to help them grow in that gradually.
Yeah.
So maybe in the beginning, they are not very comfortable talking about their strengths, and maybe they are comfortable in talking about someone else's strength. So it's like opening a window in their mind. And then, of course, ultimately, it is about, reaching a point where they begin to consider about their strengths also.
And just to piggyback on that, one of the things I've done in many countries, we preface it, this task about self-identifying your strengths is more about authenticity, who you are, than more about how others view you. So when you give the lens of authenticity and sort of ground in that way, it really helps participants to look at more of their own internal process. I've also added the website of the program, strength-based resilience is oneword.com. I've added my email, and if you have any further questions, let us know. We can share any resources. Our book is coming, book and workbook is coming later on this year. But before I leave, I cannot thank enough. Let me start with Ayesha. Absolutely wonderful work, unique population, stroke carers, and the richness and the rigor of your methodology was absolutely wonderful. This is all of these initiatives except for Guyana are volunteers, so anything we can help you with further, let us know. Murtaza and Anushka, it has been such a wonderful pleasure working with you, coming to Sri Lanka and working with you, and then finding ways. I'm constantly trying to find ways to support the adaptation of SPR in Sri Lanka. But thank you. If your dedication and your team's dedication wasn't there, we couldn't do it. Milad in Lebanon, what a unique population. How many of us have heard of journalists who are working on the high conflict zone at war fronts, and it's Milad's innovative thinking and courage to become them. Again, he did all of this was his, he spent money from his pocket to start that initiative. Hats off to you, Milad. And Nabil, I am so much looking forward to bring this program to vulnerable community. One of the things which Nabil's video didn't mention, the Guyana has one of the highest rate of suicide in per capita. So we are hoping that the strength-based approach can reduce the stigma. And hopefully we can make some dent there. Is there anything we can do through this program? Let us know. My colleague Dan Lawton is here. Thank you to Dan for attending this morning early. Just let us know. And it's over for 5 minutes, and I'm conscious you all have busy lives. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, John, for giving us this opportunity. And thank you to everyone. If I've forgotten to thank anyone, please, my apologies.
Thank you so much, Tayyab. Echoing the thank yous here, and thank you to all of you joining us today at this new time. Been a wonderful session as ever. I'll be in touch soon with the video recording from this. Have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you this time next month for our next session, which I will announce in the next email. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.